Hi everybody, this is Vincci. Apologies for our technical glitch. Just doesn't seem to work sometimes. This is how technology is. So welcome to our yin session today. My name is Vincci. So if I've never met you before, I'm one of the teachers at OSCE here. It's lovely to be able to guide you through a yin practice. And so if you're brand new to yin, just make sure if you've got any injuries, make sure you manage your own injuries in a way that if something doesn't feel right, if it's creating a sharp, short kind of nerve-based pain, make sure you come out of the pose. We'll be offering different modifications, okay? And before we begin, make sure as you find your nice spot in your house that you won't be disturbed for the next 45 minutes or so. Grab as much kind of props that might help to support your body. So if you have maybe a blanket or a towel to kneel on, maybe a cushion or a pillow if you have. Now, if you don't have a block, sometimes we do find blocks helpful in a yin practice. The closest thing I could find was a lunch box or even a thick book. If you don't have a thick book, a lunch box around the same size would be good. Just make sure it's kind of with the lid and sturdy and that it's on the mat so it won't slip. Okay, so today's practice is around resilience. So if you've gone to get some props, I'll kind of start to explain our theme here today. The idea of resilience is something perhaps it's going to show up in different forms for each one of us. Some of us, it will come through our actions, it'll come through in a physical sense, how our body will react to kind of this time of uncertainty. And for many of us, it's a time of hardship. So I really want to acknowledge you for taking the time to practice today, because this will probably help with both developing and understanding our own way of processing and resilience to not only in our yoga practice, but off the mat in our own life. And in resilience is also in the form of our own way of thinking, our own emotions as we process this time of change, things that we can no longer control, and things that perhaps we got used to being in a routine and now that's completely changed. So it is really to do with how we process change, uncertainty, and to know that whatever may come up for you, it's going to be, I guess, a byproduct of, processing all these changes. So you may feel that in your body, and you may feel that in your own thought processes and in your own emotions. So the yin practice can trigger some certain feelings. It can bring up certain memories. So just if you're brand new to yin, just be okay that that's quite normal. It will come up. And today's idea of resilience is going to come through in some poses. Some poses may be challenging in both mental or physical aspect. So just be mindful of playing your edge and finding that appropriate edge that works for you. We'll start off in a comfortable seat. So if you like, you can sit however is comfortable, whether it's sitting on even a chair. So I'm going to sit cross-legged, but if that doesn't work for you, you're welcome to sit even with the legs extended, or even come into a kneeling position if you prefer. As we find that seat now, let's take some time to settle here. You're welcome to see if you like to close your eyes or soften the gaze. Take that time now just to settle here. Arms can be relaxed, or even if you like to prefer to have one hand on the chest, one hand on the belly. Some of these are options that are all personal. You decide what's most comfortable. As you either soften the gaze or even close your eyes now, we'll start to allow the body to settle and arrive. Letting the sit bones ground down, find length through the spine. As we feel that lengthening in the spine, just supporting the back body, as you let the floor support the lower body, just getting a sense of the parts of yourself in contact with the earth, and let it hold you. Guiding awareness now to your breath. As we let go of needing to control, analyze, or change our breath in any way. Observing and watching the breath as it coming and going. Sensing the in-breath or the inhale flowing into the body. As you observe the out-breath, the exhalation leaving the body. In and out. And in your own time, as you start to observe not only the breath, you might even start to sense within your physicality, perhaps what's been stored in the body today, or even noticing within the mind if it's quite busy, observing without needing to change in any way. And I'd like to invite you to take a few clearing rounds to the bowl today. I'm just going to ring the bowl a few times and feel free even to release the breath out with a sigh. Let's begin. Deep breath in. Empty it out. Fill it up. Let it go. One more time. And empty completely. Choosing to release the things you have been holding. Sometimes we may not be aware of what that could be, and it is a practice in itself, the process of letting go. And as we come back to our own natural breath now, let's take some time to pause here and reflect on our own way of perhaps reacting, or even our own form of resilience. Our way of processing and perhaps even reacting to this new change, this new way of living. Perhaps some of us, it hasn't changed much at all. And for some of us, it's completely now out of our control. Perhaps even noting in this moment now just the thought of the change. Is it bringing up any words or reactions? Allow yourself to observe here and even notice if that inner dialogue is coming through, maybe some judgment, some words or thoughts. And not to berate yourself or to even get too attached to the words or the judgment that are coming up. For it's human to feel all these different emotions. And taking that time to notice that this will shift every moment, every day, as our lives and our thoughts start to evolve. And we'll take a deep breath here now and let it go. And part of today's practice will be also focusing on our stomach and our spleen channel in the outer thigh and the thigh area. And it's going to be really good to nourish our immunity and to nourish our spleen channel to support our immune system, especially in a time where we really want to stay healthy. So let's start with our first pose, everybody. Let's begin now to come off our seat. If you feel legs are feeling stiff, give it a shake. And let's come to our first lying down position. It's going to be a nice passive back bend. So if you like, grab your towel or blanket, place it around the middle of your mat. You're going to sort of want to make sure your pelvis and your hip bones are nice and supported here. If you want to support your feet and ankles, you're welcome to extend the blanket all the way to the back of your mat. So as you come onto your belly, everyone, start with bring your hands and forearms in front. They can be about shoulder distance apart, and your feet around hip width apart too. Now, if you're already starting to feel a little sensitive in the lower back, or you've got any injuries at the moment today, you can start by gently engaging your glutes. So you can just gently engage the butt cheek area. So that's layman terms. And you can start by perhaps seeing if this height works for you. Okay, so this is really great if you find you've been sitting a lot, if you've been working from home and your home office perhaps isn't really set up the way you'd like it to, and sitting on the chairs making your back quite achy. This is a great way to release some of that tension built up in the lower back. So as we come onto our hands and forearms, just check that you feel this is a nice comfortable start. Now some of you may find if your head or neck is feeling stiff, You can either draw the chin to the chest here. You're welcome to take your block or lunchbox to support your forehead, another option here. Or even taking your hands like a tripod shape to support your head, to hold on to your head. So take some time here to find that starting point for you. And as we talk about that edge, if you're new to the yin practice, we do talk about exploring the edge in every single pose because your body is going to evolve. Say, for example, if you're feeling stiff from a lot of, say, sitting, or if you've been doing, say, some of Wendy's or Christine's classes and you're feeling sore, you might find that this is a really nice recovery session. So as we find our way into this passive back bend, just give yourself a few moments here to settle. Whether you may feel you can stay lower because your lower back is feeling quite achy, or you can come up slightly higher. Just making sure there's no sharp nerve-based kind of pain, nursing your injuries and knowing your own limitations, and that will change each time. So finding that appropriate edge for you is going to change with each pose and each practice. We begin to guide our awareness to our breath, just like what we did previously as we started our practice. Our breath is a great teacher here to be able to gauge within your physicality and even in your mind whether you are kind of building that certain resilience to the physical aspect of the pose. Sometimes it can feel very uncomfortable. And in that discomfort, just giving yourself that time to become aware, yes, there is sensations. Is it pain or is it dull achiness? As long as it's not pain, can you sit with it? And perhaps to be able to listen into the breath and use the breath as a tool to sit with that discomfort. And part of that is, can our tool be can our breath be a tool for us for that, building that resilience, building perhaps that strength? And there's not only strength we may see as a physical aspect, but there's the mental and emotional strength. And as we find our breath, perhaps you can start to even count the breath if it helps. Inhale 1, exhale 1, inhale 2, exhale 2, and so on. And this method is not only limited to your yin practice. If you find your mind tends to be very busy, if you're trying to relax or go to bed, and you might find this breathing technique might be helpful. Or even if it's that part of the day you're feeling quite flat, or you realize you haven't been able to, kind of be conscious of your breath and you're feeling shortness of breath, it might help to even start to really count the breath and really visualize the journey of the breath flowing in from the nose. Maybe it starts to flow to the chest and towards your belly. And this pose, in this Sphinx pose, we're kind of focusing on the lower back, the kidney channel here. And as you start to visualize that breath, creating a little bit more spaciousness all the way to the lower back, letting now that space to soften a little bit more each time. If you do feel there's a lot of tension in the upper body, perhaps in the face or the jaw, maybe even the shoulders, just let it soften away from the ears. Taking these last few rounds of breaths here in your Sphinx pose. Now, when you feel ready to come out, you're welcome to start by stacking the hands underneath your forehead and just allow your head to rest now. The intention here is to allow the spine to stay nice and flat and neutral. Especially, we've been in this back bend for a couple of minutes, you might start to feel some sensations here. Now, this can be your rest pose. The rest pose is very important, I feel it's just as important as the yin practice and the yin pose. It's a good time for the body to really receive the feedback, the mind, mentally and emotionally, but also letting the fluid, the chi to flood through back into that lower back space. You might even find bending the knees and windscreen wiping the feet side to side might be nice to release through the lower back. Or you can even simply counter pose, that back bend, and come into a child's pose if you prefer. And so in these next few moments, the rest pose also has that benefit for us to observe the feedback, to sit with that stillness. And for our physicality, it's a beautiful way for the circulation, the chi to flood through the lower back area. You might even start to feel tingles or even sensations in the neighboring areas. In our own thought processes, in our emotions, things sometimes can get triggered. So it's quite normal for some things to come up to the surface, things we may not even be aware of. And in your own time from here, we'll slowly come out of our rest pose. So if you're on your belly, slowly come to your side and come sitting up. Those of you in child's pose, just slowly come back sitting up when you're ready. So in our next pose, this is going to be great for both not only our stomach and our spleen channel, but also adding a little bit more to lower back. So if you find, if you've got any lower back issues or even very tight quads, make sure you have plenty of props here to help you. Now, if you do have a bolster at home, make sure you can use that bolster. I'm going to show you an option of if you don't have a bolster at home, you can take your blanket, make sure it's nice and thick. You can even take 2 blankets and roll it over on top of the other. So this is going to be a nice long roll blanket or towel to support my spine. So you want it long ways. You can take either a block or pillow towards where your head's going to go, towards the end of that blanket. Now, if you've got a lower back issue, make sure you bring up more height, okay? So you want to make sure that when you come sitting in front of your blanket or your towel, that you've got a lot more space to work with. So once you sit in front of your blanket, make sure there's no gaps. You can start by bending the right knee and take the right heel or foot towards your right sit bone or hip area. It doesn't have to touch. Now, your right quad, your right hip flexor might be already telling you, oh, this is strong, okay? So if that's the case, either you can bring the knee closer to you. Sometimes that's more intense or less intense. It depends on where you're feeling that sensation, okay? So make sure you change and adjust to make sure that feels okay. Now, some of us, if you do experience anything going on with the right knee, say if it's not touching the mat, if it's hanging in the middle, fill in the gaps, put something underneath, whether it's a block, towel, cushion, okay? So that you don't end up forcing your right knee onto the mat. Now, from here, use your hands. If you've got any lower back sensitivity, you might even want to engage abdominals as you come down. And the idea here is to make sure when you come down, you don't necessarily have to touch your mat or floor or blanket. If you feel you're already getting that kind of sensation into the quad and your right hip flexor, that may be enough. Okay, so I'm already feeling it, so I'm going to stay here on my hands and elbows. Now, where you always start may not be where you end up. So you might find as you start to relax a little bit more and helping by breathing a little bit more and relaxing into it, you might find you might slowly kind of go deeper, but it may not happen, and that's okay. So for most of us, we may either feel it around that right quad, right hip area, some of us more in the lower back. Make sure that there's nothing pulling, no pain or sharp pulling sensation here. And making sure that when you're in it, you can feel you can stay here for another 2 to 3 minutes. And this is called half saddle. It's a pose that will get straight into the stomach and the spleen channel right here on the thigh, but also come back into the kidney channel once more. And so you may sometimes feel that from a lot of the sitting that you're doing at home, you can feel that tightness running through, not only in the hips, but you can maybe sometimes feel it running through the psoas all the way to the lower back. So this is a really lovely way to start to open up through some of the tightness here and also getting to the hip joint. So come back to whether you'd like to count the breath, or you might even start to find the Soham meditation helpful. So Soham meditation is a lovely way to stay with the breath, but also to be able to let yourself mentally and physically surrender, which is very helpful at this time when, maybe there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry and concerns. So Soham meditation is very simple. The idea here is as you breathe in, thinking of the word so, and as you exhale, saying to yourself the sound hum. So hum. Inhale on the so, exhale on the hum. So we're all going to find our own way of the tools, mantras or breathing techniques that will be helpful. That could always change each time in our practice. So you don't necessarily have to stick to one. You might sometimes find one day you gravitate towards one, another day it'll be something different. So finding your way, whether it's through your breath, Soham, or even coming back to the idea of resilience. How are you processing that? And to be okay with how you are, whatever way you're reacting, that it's okay. Going with what feels right for you. And so in the next couple of breaths, if you're feeling some tension in the body, whether it's in the quad, lower back, maybe even the upper body, just letting that soften a little bit more now. And a couple of options in terms of coming out. Some of us may find rolling to the left side might be nice to straighten that right leg. Some of us may find sitting back up. Now, if you're sitting back up, make sure you can engage your abdomen to support your lower back. Use your hands and forearms. Don't spring back up too quickly. Take as much time as you need to come back up. You can use your hands to support that right leg and give it a shake. Sometimes if it's helpful to come into butterfly or even just taking that time to do some windscreen wipers. When you feel ready to come into the other side, we'll start by bending that left knee. And the angle of that left foot is going to change because most of us will find our left quad, hip flexor, or even lower back is going to feel probably a different mobility or sensation here. So take your time. When you start to lower yourself down, you might find engaging abdomen's helpful. You might find that height will start to change even where you end up landing, just making sure that your lower back is supported if you've got any lower back sensitivity. And my left quad, I know, is super tight. And so this is where I'm going to stay for now. So make sure that if your breath is already quite rapid and shallow and labored, you may have already gone past your appropriate edge. So that could mean coming up higher. It could mean even coming back up, setting yourself up with more props. So maybe for myself, maybe I'm just going to grab another cushion. And hopefully that might be nice to just settle. So you can just find your way. If that left knee is hanging off your mat, make sure you grab something to fill in the gaps. And so as you settle into the left side, checking in that you find within your breath as your guide, that everything is feeling good. If you would like to settle here now, bring your attention back to your breath. Whether it's counting the breath, listening to the breath even, coming and going, and perhaps even Soham meditation. And a lot of these tools can be used during your daily routine. It doesn't have to be restricted to being on a yoga mat. And finding that time for your practice, just like now, it's so incredibly valuable for yourself, for your physical, your mental and emotional health. I've noticed for myself, since all these changes are happening, I'm gravitating so much more to my meditation and my yin practice to kind of feel more grounded and to be able to have a part of my day where I have some familiarity, a little bit of routine and a bit of sanity, sometimes in the way of my home life, where I'm now trying to balance homeschooling and, you know, being at home, being restricted to perhaps not being able to go out as much, having a coffee with friends, and just the little things that I miss. I kind of start to find meditation is a really lovely way to build that gratitude for my own life and for what I have, my health, my family. So, you know, we all find our own way, and that if I didn't know how to practice yin or meditation, I think I'll be slightly cuckoo and going quite mad. So we all have our own thing. We all have our own mechanism and tools that we perhaps can gravitate towards too. And so there's no right or wrong of when you can practice or should practice your meditation and your yin practice. So in your own time, from where you are in that left side, let's take a few more breaths to soften through any other areas you might be feeling you're tensing up. And depending how you felt coming out of it last time on that first side, you're welcome to see whether rolling onto your right side this time might be helpful to come out. So that's more helpful. Or you could slowly come sitting up. Make sure you engage your abdomen as you come sitting up. Now, some of us after that pose, you might be feeling some achiness. Feel free now as a rest pose. You can either come into a child's pose and you can keep all your props there if you like to just more of a supported child's pose. That's nice to round the spine. Or if you like, you can even just simply lie on your back or belly. So with rest poses, the intention of the rest pose is to come into a nice neutral position where your physical body can rest. And now synovial fluid is probably going to start to flood through the hip joint site now. You're probably going to start to feel certain sensations and release. And the more you start to do the yin practice, you're probably going to start to find that there's a change in your mobility and even the freedom of movement, less stiffness. And in the Chinese medicine theory is that clearing of stagnation of qi in the body, which is great for our overall health, okay? So we got into the stomach and spleen channel there as well as our kidney. So just take that time now in the rest of the next couple of breaths to enjoy your rest pose. And to be able to watch and observe, it takes practice. Sometimes we may instinctively or habitually react, or we call them samskaras. These habits are so embedded within us. It's part of, we feel our ego to react or to feel we have to do something or control something, which is why this whole change of uncertainty is really kind of creating many parallels to grief, letting go of our previous life, the life of routine, the life of what we had prior to all the changes at the moment. And so as you come out of the pose, the rest pose, take your time. Let's come up to sitting now. Let's come into one of my favorite poses. It's, when I say favorite, it's because you definitely feel something in it, and you'll feel various things that perhaps it's a mixture of physical, emotional, mental, and definitely there'll be an idea of understanding resilience in this pose. So let's take our towel and blanket. Let's place it around the middle of our mat. Now you're welcome to extend the blanket all the way to the back for your feet and your ankles, especially if you're on a hard floor like me, you need some cushioning for the feet and the knees. Okay, so take perhaps whether a block or your lunchbox and your cushion. Now, I'm going to start on my left side. So I'm going to place my cushion on under my left knee, okay? So we're going to come onto tabletop, everyone. So we'll start with hands underneath the shoulders, knees hip width apart. Now, we're going to step our right foot forward as if we're coming into a low lunge. Okay, so here is when you can have a block or lunchbox handy close by if you want to stay up higher in this pose. And we're going to tuck our left toes under and take the left foot just back a little bit. So we're going to get into that left hip flexor all the way through here. So if your left side is quite tight, you're probably already starting to feel it now. Now, those of you who would like to stay up high, you probably will find if this is enough, stay high, stay in this height, okay? And if you want to go lower, you're welcome to, but just be mindful that you're going to be here for a couple of minutes, okay? So if you're already finding this is quite strong, stay up higher, and you can always eventually come down if you need to. If you want to get into that right side too, walk your right foot out. You may want to come onto the knife's edge. You might even want to take that right hand and get into that right inner groin. Many of us will find we're going to feel something. If not already on the left side, you can always explore the right side too. But to be able to hold this pose in a way that you can still breathe relatively comfortably, that itself will be some more of a challenge for some of us. And this is where the idea of the breath, using the breath as a tool and helping the body, the physical body, the muscles to soften. Our breath is a great way to help us, to guide us to that place. And why we always talk about softening the muscles is because we're already working our muscles in more of a dynamic practice. Say, for example, Barre, Pilates, functional training. All the cardio works on more the muscle and our circulation. So the yin practice is intending to get a little bit deeper into the connective tissue, which is really only kind of most optimum when the muscles are relaxed, which is why we talk about the breath so much. We want to relax the muscles. We can get a little bit deeper in the joint side and that left side of the hip, as well as the right inner groin area. So it's really important with each practice. It's not about forcing, because mentally if you're forcing, your ego is fighting something. And when your ego is fighting something, your nervous system is hitting that whole fight and flight survival way, which is what we've probably been in already. So you want to come away from that and stay more of a relaxation mode. So that does help with breathing in a way that's comfortable. Not forcing the actual pose, not forcing with the mind, and to be able to surrender. And the more we practice this, the more we realize when we're in those moments our ego is fighting, our mind is fighting, and perhaps to step back a little and to ask ourselves, when we're forcing and pushing, does this serve me? Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. So knowing that you can be able to sit with it in a way perhaps you didn't expect to, or you initially didn't want to, but you can be able to sit with the discomfort in a way you can slowly breathe and relax. Not only on the mat, but also in life. To be able to let go of the need to control and force something to go your way. And right now, more than ever, this is an important tool to practice. So in your dragon pose, take your time. If you've walked the right foot out quite far, walk it back. If you like, you can start to straighten that right leg if it helps to just release through any stiffness. Option here now is to start to walk our feet back into more walking our down dog if it helps to release through anything here. Take some time if you want to come into a short rest pose between sides, but if you're ready to come to the other side, slowly set your props up. You might find that the props may look different on this side because we're all different. So our own physicality is going to be different. So don't always kind of force and expect everything to look the same on each side. So this time we're going to step our left foot in front, tuck the right toes, bring that right knee back just a little, getting into that right hip there. Now, you might find that's enough today, whether you want to stay up high, come down lower if you wish. Walk that left foot out if you like. Now, you don't necessarily have to aesthetically look the same, okay? So we sometimes can get caught up in the aesthetic aspect of our yoga practice. So just be mindful when you are in there, your right hip is feeling okay, nothing is hurting. If you do have any injuries and any concerns today, especially in the hip area, or even in the feet, if you find it's quite strong in the knees or feet, make sure you stay up higher, less weight and pressure on the knees and on the hips as well. So guide your awareness to your breath. When you find your way in your dragon pose where you know you'll be able to hold it for another couple of minutes, whether the Soham meditation is effective or counting the breath, letting some tension, whether it could be in the face or the shoulders, to soften. Allowing yourself this time to melt into those tension spots. In this pose, I feel it's quite effective for those who do a lot of running and cardio, where your hip area, hip flexors, psoas can get very tight. The connective tissue gets dehydrated from overuse and repetitive motion. And so hopefully over time this pose will help with opening up the mobility in the body, as well as just creating a little bit more of freeness in your stride and in your squats and jumps. And so we'll take a few more rounds of breaths here. Notice if the mind's wandered off, which it's very good at, the monkey mind, and it's okay if it will. And just guide it back to your breath, these last few rounds of breaths. And when you do want to come out, take your time. If you want to straighten that left leg, feel free to walk that foot back if you want to walk it out. Take that time to now find your rest pose. It can be lying on your back, especially if it's a very strong pose for you. Feel free to lie on your back. Child's pose is another option. So take that time to find your way to rest. Some poses can feel very overwhelming, and the more you can say intense it is at the time, most likely the feedback coming through can be quite, sometimes it can be quite overwhelming, it can be quite strong, sometimes neutral. It can also be very much, man, there's nothing coming through, and that's okay. So taking this time now to receive, whether it's in your sensations through your body, sometimes a flush of fluid or circulation in the blood, just letting things flow through. And if you do find within your in-practice, if you're brand new, I definitely encourage you to drink lots of water after the practice. We're flushing through a lot. And sometimes you may also sometimes experience some vivid dreams. It's quite normal because it can stir things up for us. So let's now come to lying on our backs. So if you're in child's pose, slowly let's meet to lie on our back. So before we do that, before we go into lying sleeping mode, let's grab maybe a cushion or pillow to support our head. And if you have a bolster at home, have it nearby for your Shavasana. We're just going to come into a very simple windscreen wiper twist before we come into relaxation. So as we lie down, have your feet about hip width apart. Bring your arms out shoulder height. Feel free to just take the knees side to side, left and right. And you may find between one side and another that one side can feel very stiff. Whether you like to stay here, take a few breaths and let it go. As an option, if you want to go a little bit deeper, for example, my knees are on the left side of the room. You can take your left ankle on top of the right thigh. So that kind of just increases that rotation. But if that's too strong, feel free to bring the feet back onto the mat. So whichever side you're on right now, just take another 2 breaths or so here. Then coming back into the middle, let's take our knees to the other side, and you may feel a different sensation here. You might want to keep the feet on the mat. The other option is taking your foot onto the other thigh. So from here, if you like, you're welcome to stay here for another few breaths. If you're ready to transition to Shavasana, let's start to set up our props. If you like, you can start to bring bolster or another rolled blanket under your knees if you like. You can take maybe perhaps a blanket if you're cold, or layer up. Eye pillow if you have one, if you want to make sure that you're not disturbed for the next 5 or so minutes. Some of you may want to stay in a longer Shavasana today, so just making sure that you're not going to be disturbed, your phone is off, and so on. So we'll take our time now just to pause and find that stillness. This is a beautiful time to receive, and perhaps it may be for some of us the only time in the day we have to ourselves. If we sort of living with our family or other people in the house, and we just finding that moment, that time to ourselves is really important. To be with that stillness and to be with ourselves, whether it's in our own thoughts and in our own bodies, and just to have this space and permission to let go. So take some time now to let the arms relax by your side, making sure you are feeling comfortable and warm. Letting the eyes rest now, closing them down. Feel free now to maybe perhaps add a yawn or check in any stiffness in the face and the jaw. Just let it soften. And allowing the shoulders to come away from the ears. Belly soft. Letting the legs feel heavy. Sensing the parts of yourself in contact with the earth. Let the earth support you. And with each breath, sensing yourself sinking further down. Allow yourself to completely surrender. Let it go. And so some of you may want to stay longer in your Shavasana, and there is no time limit. If you can stay longer, stay as long as you need. I'll leave it here with you to decide when you like to come out of your Shavasana. But before I go, I just want to wish you a lovely, safe and happy Easter. It's going to be a little bit different to all the previous Easters, I'm sure. But to know that this is a short-term discomfort for some of us. We may not know the future. We may not know what's going to happen even tomorrow. But to have that gratitude for your health, your well-being, your loved ones are there with you, whether virtually or physically. And I'm going to be here for many more practices. Hopefully I can share many more classes with you. In the meantime, enjoy your lovely Easter. Have lots of yummy treats, I'm sure. And it's been such a wonderful privilege to be able to guide you through today's yin class. Thank you so much. Namaste. Bye everyone. Thank you.